Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for another edition of Let's Argue, where we hop on the internet, we take your hot takes, your unpopular opinions, your tough questions, we respond to the best ones in this video. That's what we're gonna do. Let's do it. Kanye will drop on February 22nd. Whether this means his album will be short like his 2018 projects is yet to be seen, but the date is too perfect for him not to drop. Is the date really cool? Yes. Does Kanye seem very determined to do this Donda 2 drop? Yes. But if you asked me, would I put down $500 on Donda 2 dropping on this date? Fuck you. I wouldn't. I would. That would be $500 down the toilet. There's probably a guy behind the scenes paying artists so that they bought NFTs for marketing reasons. There's no way that many artists are investing that much money into this shit. You think Eminem woke up one day and was just super into fucking NFTs? Like, of course they're all being paid to advertise the shit. All of these things are brand tie-ins. That's all they are. The only person who is genuinely into the NFT grift, as far as like musicians and celebrities go, is Jimmy Fallon.
It reminded me of me a little bit.
Jimmy Fallon's probably been paid $0 to promote NFTs because he genuinely in his heart thinks they're real neat. Alvin and the Chipmunks have unarguably been super influential to today's hip-hop. Very high-pitched auto-tune vocals have been used over several albums. Without them, we wouldn't have Blonde. Frank uses these vocals throughout the entire project. They're vital to the record. You know, I think Alvin and the Chipmunks are influential because in a lot of ways they're the opposite of Chopped and Screwed with how they did those chipmunk vocals back in the day. That undoubtedly was a big influence in the Houston scene, and who knows, you know, if we would have all of those classic Chopped and Screwed records without Alvin and the Chipmunks. Bareface, Dom, and Kevin will all have classic albums by the end of the decade. Other talented members will also see success, but in the underground as opposed to the mainstream. Wow, that's quite the prediction. It's a big shot in the dark because like there's so many people in the group, and look, you know, we know how sort of like a lot of those post 36 Chambers Wu-Tang albums and discographies went. Some artists just like went downhill quickly. Some it took years for them to actually put a record or a single out or something, and others like have totally fucking amazing classic discographies. The likelihood that we'll get, you know, maybe 3 or 4 fantastic runs out of a couple members, I think is likely. Being a music tsundere is perfectly valid. I used to hate all of my favorite artists because I didn't understand what made them so good until I gave them enough tries and they clicked. Instantly liking music is valid too. That's such a weird way to phrase it. I thought when you were using that term, you were maybe referring to it in a way where like when somebody came up to you and asked you like what band you were listening to, you were like a dick to them and you were sort of gatekeeping, but like then afterwards, after they kept asking, you sort of started to, you know, take them under your wing and like teach them the ways of, I don't know, like Scrams or some shit. But yeah, I guess like taking a few listens to like an album or artist is fine. Echo 2K will never make another album. He may have made singles and EPs throughout his career, but it took him almost a decade to release E. What are the odds he'll actually release another album in the near future or ever again? Let's say hypothetically Echo 2K never drops another album, okay? But continues making music, like, you know, be they singles or EPs or whatever. Like, as long as Echo 2K is still active, does it really matter? I mean, as much as I love the album format, obviously in a way my entire career like orbits around and exists on the album format, I think like, you know, the next generation needs to start thinking outside of that box a little bit. I mean, the album is great, and I think the album in a lot of ways is inevitable because, you know, you need ways to group songs together to show people a body of work. And when you're releasing tracks, like, you never really know what song is going to end up hitting with people or resonating with people in, you know, one batch of songs or whatever. I'm rambling, but all I'm trying to say here is that, like, the album doesn't have to be the format, does not need to be the guiding release principle of any given artist's output schedule. If you feel like as an artist that you're completely fine and you're financially like afloat, just releasing singles and EPs and one-off collaborations and stuff like that, do that. You know, if like your passion artistically doesn't lie in the album, then don't focus on it. As long as an artist is active and they're putting out good stuff, as long as it's good, as long as it's like music you love and it's entertaining and they're like holding themselves to some kind of artistic standard, you know, who gives a fuck if it comes in the format of an album, EP, a mix, or whatever? Animal Collective didn't fall off after Meriwether Post Pavilion. People just wanted them to continue in the direction of that record, and they didn't. Centipede Hurts is one of their best albums, and people are going to realize that soon after Time Skiffs comes out. I don't think that about Centipede Hurts. I don't think Painting With is a great album either, but I don't think that was proof of Animal Collective falling off, honestly, or any kind of like greater trend in their discography necessarily. Like anybody who had either enjoyed Animal Collective up to Meriwether Post Pavilion or went back to look at all of their other records to kind of see the way they progressed, like you see pretty easily that all their albums are fucking wildly different. Like they go into a different creative and sonically conceptual space with every single record they put out. It wasn't so much about, I'll just say personally, it wasn't so much about the band falling off as much as it was about, well, these are just two records in their discography that I don't really care for. Just like there's some records in their back catalog that I don't really like. I don't like fucking Campfire Songs. I think that record's kind of boring and one-dimensional. Knowing the band always jumps around with every new record, like I thought and I will continue to think that look, there's going to be some Animal Collective records I think are great and there's going to be some that I don't, and it's just going to depend on what direction and sound the band is going for on a given album cycle, and that's it. You know, honestly, even if it does lead to some records that I don't like all that much, I wouldn't really have it any other way, because the fact that Animal Collective is willing to take a risk with each new LP makes them interesting to listen to and just kind of, you know, check in with regardless. For as consistently fabulous as Unwound and their discography are, I feel like they are criminally underrated and overlooked when it comes to the greater post-hardcore canon and the 90s indie landscape. The only band that rivals Fugazi in terms of sheer quality. I'm not as big into Unwound as a lot of people are, but like the fervor for Unwound is a lot more recent than I think people in the internet age understand. I mean, Unwound is cool, and obviously like Unwound has a lot of history in indie and post-hardcore. I'm not saying like, you know, they were just like discovered a few years ago or anything like that, but like, you know, when you're talking about like the post-hardcore canon and people sort of in those discussions in the 2000s, like Unwound wasn't brought up as often as they are today. So I think like, you know, they're kind of receiving some, I think some long awaited appreciation that they didn't get back in the day. And, you know, that's fine. With that being said though, like, I mean, I prefer Fugazi way fucking more. And, you know, at this point, are they really underrated anymore? Because I think right now in 2022, like in the internet age, Unwound is getting way more fucking love than they ever did in the 90s. I think they're right where they need to be, I guess. Without trying to gatekeep, there's a difference between being there and being invested in the promo of an album release and finding an album years after. T-Lop and Damn, for instance, created quite some memories and even complete experiences that change how you perceive an album. I guess certain experiences could be attached to being there in the moment when an album is being rolled out, but like, what are those experiences and why are they more significant than finding out about an album years later? Like, yeah, sure, memories are great and memories are cool and they can affect how you perceive a record, but like, all you're really saying here is like, I like an album more, or I think I appreciate an album more because of like personal experiences I have linked to it, like nostalgia. If somebody listens to an album after the fact and decides that they like it, to me, that's enjoying it from possibly a more clear-headed point of view, because you don't have that nostalgia or that past bias to inform your enjoyment of the record. Or even if you go into that record years after the fact and you're like, you know what, this sucks. You know, maybe you only really like it because you sort of had to be there, but like maybe it's not aging that well, or it doesn't really make sense in a more modern context. I don't know. Okay, That's it, everybody. This has been another great episode of Let's Argue. I argued with you. You argued with me. We argued. Now argue in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Anthony Fantano, over here next to my head. It's another video you can check out. Hit that upper the link to subscribe to the channel. Mwah. Anthony Fantano, argue forever.